All right, I'm gonna try this out. Can you hear me?
Yeah, works better. Yep, gotcha.
All I had to do is disconnect the Apple products. Let's go.
Too great. Well, we don't want to run overtime here, so we're going to get started. It looks like people are still trickling in. Alex, you got a thumbs up on me that we're recording this? Should be good. Thumbs up. All right, well, we'll get going here. Welcome everyone to the very first LeagueOS Roundtable. I am Netizen01, Joel Stewart, the man behind the curtain on all things LeagueOS. But tonight is not about me. Tonight is about the four gentlemen that I've gathered here. These are some of my best friends. I've gone to college with almost all of them, and have worked with all of them in some capacity. Nate's laughing. And we've kind of we all started kind of in the similar space in our career paths, but have definitely gone in a lot of different directions across the industry. And I think it's going to be really fun for us to actually catch up because we've been all over the country at this point and are not necessarily all in the same spot. So part of this is us catching up together, but also letting you guys get some insight into our career paths and what we've done in our lives over the last 15 years, where we're at. So I am going to start us off with Nate Pasiga, Nate Pack on the screen. Nate lives down the road from me. He is a master of game development. He's been an indie developer, started many companies by himself, and is now working at Scopely as one of the head game designers, managed softwares. I'm not sure. He'll have to dive into all the details of his job description, but that's on him. So Nate, give us your rundown on where you started, where you are now, and all the things.
Yeah, thanks, Joel. Yeah, so I'm a technical director at Scopely. We're probably one of the biggest little-known game companies in the world. Work on such IPs as Scrabble, Monopoly Go is a game that we just came out with, which is one of the top mobile games in the world right now. Star Trek, and I work on WWE video games. So that's what I'm doing right now. So I'm kind of king of the nerds, working with co-development studios. So that's what I do over at Scopely. To kind of go back into my past a little bit, I'm probably one of the weirder ones on the panel tonight. I took a very unconventional path, and I didn't go to college. I was slated to go to college and decided not to. Saw the bill on my kitchen table of how much it was going to cost me to go to college, and this was 20 years ago, so it's even worse now. So I saw the bill and I'm like, I don't want to do that. So I didn't do that. And instead, I just delivered pizzas. And then I later found an ad for Century College to be a Microsoft certified systems engineer. So a certificate for doing network engineering. I'm like, oh, that sounds interesting. So I did that instead. Went to class for a few months. And then I asked the professor, hey, when are we going to take the test for this certification? He looked at me blankly. He was like, there is no test. You don't take it here. And I'm like, wait, what? And I said, well, where do you take it? And he's like, well, it's a testing center down in Bloomington. And I'm like, wait a minute. So I go to a testing center to take this? I don't actually take it here at college? He's like, yeah, that's right. I'm like, oh, so this will be my last day of school then. So I dropped out of that too, and then went and just took all the tests myself and passed the certification without going to class. So you can also do that too. So that's another way to get certifications. That's right. Thank you, Mark. So I did IT for a bit, and while I was doing IT, I discovered Flash. And the rest is history. All I could do was study Flash back then. It's probably before a lot of kids' time on this call, but that's all right. Did contracting for 10 years. Then around 2012, moved to San Francisco and joined a few game companies there. Had a great time, learned a lot. I'm always going to encourage people to go get a job in the industry and learn from the big boys and see what's right, see what's wrong. I think it's better to do that than to just jump in and do indie. Always try to get a job, get paid to learn, all of that. So you'll hear me say that a couple times tonight. Did that for a few years, went back to Minnesota and actually joined up with Joel Netizen at his office space. And like you said, did a couple companies, a lot of companies, and a lot of different game projects. And worked in the same office as him for 6.5 years, I believe it was, Joel. Now I'm finally in my own office here in my house. And I won't get into all the companies and all the things, but then ended up at Scopely, which doing great there. Happy to be there. And that's me in a nutshell.
Pretty good nutshell. Some of the companies that you had in between there, you really breezed over them. You went from Flash into a lot of companies into Scopely. You want to maybe give me a little bit more detail on
Oh yeah,
a few
sure.
a few of the startups. Just I know I'm thinking of one,
Yeah.
maybe two. Yeah.
Yeah, I worked
maybe,
for
maybe one or two of the games that you've launched as an indie dev as well, because you've launched a couple.
Oh, sure.
More, yeah.
Sure. Yeah, I can do that. I worked for Kixeye, and that's where I did a browser-based MMO called Battle Pirates. I worked at DNA. Didn't launch a game there. I wasn't there long enough. At Kabam, I worked on The Hobbit. And then as an indie dev, I made a game on. You can actually find it if you Google Turbo Town. You can find Turbo Town. It's listed under itch.io, and I've heard other people call it Ichiro or something. I'm like, no, it's itch.io. Come on, people. So, and it's also on iOS right now too. So, if you search Turbo Town, you can find it. And then I did a lot of skill-based gaming, solitaire, match 3. I did a company called Gank, skill-based gaming platform, and I've also done skill-based gaming for World Winner, Game Taco, and Skills.
Yeah, he breezed right past all that. Thank you. Okay, so that's Nate. Yeah, it was a lot. So Nate has definitely been around the block a couple times on all those things and has ended up at Scopely is his current role. So I'm going to jump over to Josh, aka Brandmeyer. Not sure where that one comes from, Josh. That's new to me. What happened to Wolfpack 515 or something?
Never quite that, but Brandmeyer I stole from Mark, who you'll hear from in a little bit. Okay. That was totally his thing, and I stole it and have run with it for many years now.
So Josh,
so
Josh and I met at college at Bethel. We were on this floor mates our freshman year, and then we're roommates for a couple years after that, and ended up at the same first job out of school together, Destineer. So I'll let him take it off from there.
All right, yeah. Thanks, Joel. So, like you said, we were college roommates, so we go way back. As we were graduating, we were not necessarily jointly, but we were looking for something fun to do in software, and we liked games, and so a few of us all found this cool little company that made video games in the Twin Cities where we were based, and it was Destineer Studios. So we spent a couple years together there. We were kind of building our own game engine, so we weren't using a bespoke one like Unreal or Unity or so forth. We were kind of building our own thing. So like Nate said, we were being paid to learn a lot because we were new grads, didn't know what we were doing yet, and we were building our own game engine. So that was super fun. It was a really fun 2 years. But we learned a lot, we'll put it that way. So when that company had some changes and decided to move to North Carolina, I decided I didn't want to do that. So I pivoted. I left the game industry. So I had degrees in both computer science and biology. My interests were always around medical technology, things like that, even though video games were fun. So I pivoted into medical technology companies. I went to St. Jude Medical, also here in Minnesota. I worked on some electrophysiology, like heart mapping software, where you stick electrodes into people's hearts, essentially, and track those locations and track the electrograms, the electrical signals, as you move them around inside the heart. And you build pretty color-coded maps that the surgeons can look at in real time in the surgical room, and they can use those maps to understand what is going on in that person's heart electrically. And then they can.
So you were making a video game. It was just a video game for doctors, basically.
I was making a video game for doctors, in essence, yes. They would be driving their catheters around inside the person's heart in real time, finding the right spot and using it to treat the patient. So that was pretty cool. That was a really fun project. I was there for about 8 years, and then I decided that I wanted to go work with the big boys again, as Nate said a moment ago. I moved on out to the Bay Area. I took a job with Apple. I worked at Apple for a couple of years. And after a couple of years on the team that I was at there, I decided that I was missing the medical things again. I was not working on medical projects there. So I ended up joining
What team?
I was on, it wasn't super exciting, but I was on calendar contacts and reminders for iOS and Mac. So yeah, I enjoyed that position. It was a fairly stable position. I think that you'll find a lot of a widely varied experience at some of the big tech companies, depending on what team you land on. And I landed on a team that was fairly established and maybe a little bit more slower pace of life compared to people that were working on the latest iPhone in the hardware division and so forth. So I think you'll hear a lot of different things at these big companies depending on where you land. And I really enjoyed it there. I loved Apple, but I found that I was missing the medical side of things, and I ended up jumping over to a company called Verily Life Sciences, which is an Alphabet company. So we're a sister company to Google in that same umbrella. We're kind of one of Google's big moonshot companies, kind of the first big moonshot that Google was taking. So at Verily, I'm going a little long here maybe, but at Verily I was working on a few cool projects. When I went there, I was working on a surgical robot. So again, there was some video gamey aspect to it where they were controlling the robot in real time using the software that I was working on. And then after that, I was working on a system that would use machine learning to find polyps during colonoscopies in real time for the doctors, so that as they were doing the exam, it would help make sure that they weren't missing things, and again, helping people, hopefully saving some lives. And then, yeah, so recently the company has pivoted again a bit more towards precision medicine. And I'm not going to talk too much about what we're doing right now. I'm not usually a public speaker, so I want to make sure that I'm not divulging anything that I shouldn't. But the main idea is that we're kind of we're at a unique intersection of technology and data science and healthcare, where we can use the strengths of Google and apply them to medicine.
Very cool. Yeah. So I'll have one quick follow up for you. How much value do you think there was in our first job at Destineer and what we learned and where we were thrown into the fire, literally, on that, not literally, but figuratively, on that project, you and Mark. How much do you think our experience there impacted your ability to perform at Apple and Verily?
It was an amazing experience. Like it was really good, and I would say it was a really great first job out of college, where we weren't necessarily just being hovered over by senior engineers that would control everything that we were doing. We were allowed to do and learn and make mistakes and do again. We were lucky to have a couple great mentors there that did help to guide us where we could, but it was really just a lot of learning by doing, and that was really excellent for me as an early stage, as a young career developer. I don't know that it worked out the best for the company. I would not say that that's maybe the best strategy for a company to use, is to hire a bunch of kids straight out of college with not a whole lot of oversight. But we learned a lot. The kids learned a lot. And I think it was a great experience for us anyway.
Yeah, for sure. And nobody died in the process. So, hey, that's always a win. Nobody died. Okay, thanks, Josh. So I'm going to move over to the other, we call ourselves a trifecta, I think, at one point. So Carlos, I've also met in college, graduated the same year, although he is a couple years my senior. But he was generous enough to also let me shack up with him right after college while I was kind of in between stages of my life. I don't know if he remembers that. Yeah, I slept in one of your guest bedrooms for like a better part of 6 months, I think.
Yeah, I
And
remember that before he got married. Yeah.
yeah, and so he's been one of my voices of sanity sometimes in my life, and also insanity. So, but I'm pleased to present Carlos. Carlos's career path has been quite a bit more wild than I think some of ours as well. But I'll let him tell it. So,
Hi, everybody. So I'm Carlos Curran, and yeah, I do have a pretty unique career path. Like I was a professional actor for about 7 years, starting at the tail end of college, and I'd even gone out to LA and started doing fairly well for my age for a person who just went out to LA way too soon and way too underprepared and without a parent who was an owner of a movie studio. Um, and after being there for a while and having a very enjoyable year, I really just wanted my next interview to be based on merit, which was not happening in Los Angeles. And remember, I had a great year. I loved it there. So I came back to Minnesota, got married, and I went to school. Started my wife and I went to school. That's where I met um, Josh and Joel. And then I started studying computer science. And I did not completely retire like from being an actor until like our, I don't know, our junior year, our senior year. I had to shave my head to make sure that my agents wouldn't call me back to send me out on auditions anymore, which they did. And I said, okay, I will happily go on that audition. Just, I don't have any hair. Is that okay? And they're like, no, it's not okay. I'm like, all right, sorry, computer science for me. Um, so then we started working on that game at Destineer. Um, we we worked on a game that I don't think either two mentioned was based on a war that was in progress. We made a game basically at the behest of the 3rd Battalion, 3-1 Battalion of the Marine Corps, because they had just fought like the most important battle in modern military history. They had taken a contested city for only the 3rd time, and so that stacks all of the deck against us. But we went ahead and did it because we're gonna do it. First try, it'll be easy. It was not easy, and I was one of the ones that decided to move to North Carolina and try and finish the game. And after about a year and a half there, that did not work out. And so then my new goal was just to get any major AAA game out the door. That's what I wanted to do. So before the studio shut down, which I kind of knew was going to happen, I had a lot of interviews and queries lined up, and then I got an offer from a studio in New York City called Chaos Studios, which was part of THQ. And so spent another 2 years there, really just enjoying New York with my family, but working brutal hours to get that game out the door, which we did, and we were happy, and we met our sales targets and our tech targets and our platform targets, and we were happy. And our reward was getting laid off again, which I knew would happen. And so then I went out to the Bay Area. I worked for Havoc, and I still have that swag. You can see it. Best sweater they ever gave me. Still love their physics engine. I was only able to work for them for a year. I had to lay myself off. I couldn't afford to continue to work for them. I had to go mercenary, at least as much as one could do in the games industry. I went over to Crystal Dynamics just as they were launching the reboot of Tomb Raider. And I was working on another project that they were developing against the new engine and the new tool suite there, and occasionally fixing a few bugs because Tomb Raider was, they're trying to gear to ship. And then for kind of personal and family medical reasons, I took a job with Microsoft to work on Halo 5, and we all moved to Seattle. So then we've been in Seattle for 10 years, shipped Halo 5, went over to Amazon to work with them on what was then called the Lumberyard engine. and now it's the Open 3D engine, and a few games that they launched at the same time. I helped kind of like go and do like kind of strike teams, help them work it out. And then now I just finished my first year at Apple. I work on the Apple Vision Pro. And
Excuse me, you want to say that again and louder for the people in the back?
sorry. Now I've been at Apple a year. I work on the Apple Vision Pro. And I can't tell if it's a joke because of my like COVID voice. Like you guys can hear me pretty well, right? But yeah. And I work on the reality kit team. And one of my first responsibilities was making sure that kind of what Josh mentioned, like iCal, notes, all of the iOS apps would run in a 3D, virtual spatial computing context without any input from the original app author, which was not easy. And so to the question, it's really interesting for me because one of my secondary or tied for primary interest has always been to work on the kind of stuff that Josh is working on a real-time simulation, video games for lack of better terms, in the medical field. And my daughter's surgeon, when I told her about the Apple Vision Pro, she was out of her mind. She's like, when can I get this? Can I do this now? I have people to train. I have residents to train. Can I get this now? And I had to tell her, like, I'm sorry, it's going to be out a little bit later, and you're going to have to work with us. You're going to want to make it happen. But I think that kind of that first experience for us was really, really valuable. The stuff that I was working on at Amazon, that engine goes really wide. It goes into robotics. It goes all over into various simulation fields. People who are trying to use real-time engines or high-quality simulation engines with 3D rendering to do kind of offline services to provide the data to train machine learn models that will then be used to operate against real-world situations, which is a super complicated pain in the ass problem, but still needs people who can just sit down and make a video game and make sure it's highly performant, right? And then the Apple Vision Pro is, it's the most complicated product Apple has ever made. It's straight up the most complicated video game I've ever made. It's making the platform, making the engine, and then making all of the apps like all at once, and rendering it at Apple levels of polish and quality. Which is pretty brutal. So it's been a very weird and wild ride. I have, to my own surprise, brought the skill set that I learned in acting to like every job I've ever worked at, which I didn't ever give it enough credit for, but all my managers tell me it comes in really valuable. And what we learned at that like brutal boot camp of our first game at Destineer, like that has been very valuable.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions later regarding soft skills, and I know you leaned into that hard with us, and when we were trying to figure out what was next for Destineer and what to do. So we'll come back to that later. Thanks, Carlos. And so then we'll wrap it all up with our what do you call the fourth batter? I forget the cleanup hitter. So we'll clean up. Yeah, we'll do clean up with Mark Bozon. Yeah. Oh, I'll do my intro with Mark. Met Mark in college as well. He was in a different dorm our freshman year, but he is one of Josh's best friends going back to childhood. And so pretty quickly I got introduced to him and quickly hit it off. He's a crazy guy. I love him to death and am excited to connect with him here again because it's been a few years. And yeah, definitely a non-typical career path, but I think one that's equally as exciting as anyone I've ever met. So take it away, Mark. Can't hear you. Turn off the Apple hardware. Or turn on the Apple hardware. Uh-oh. Nope. Can't hear you. No, no, no. Thumbs down. No. Nope. Hey, you talk. I'll talk for you. Okay, so Mark. Wait for it. He's coming. So I think Mark did 2 years at Bethel. I'm going to start talking while he gets his stuff figured out till he can go on. And then, was it 2 years, Josh? Josh, you can jump in here and help me construct his path. In and out. Let's see. Where was it? Moderator, get him back in. Bring him up on stage again. Nope. Yep. So when we met Mark had been working on game design for a company called Way Forward out of the Bay. His older brother, Josh. I need you to help me out here. Right to speak.
Yep. Yeah, his older brother.
Yeah, his older brother for Way Forward out in the Bay.
Am I now?
There we go. All right, take it away.
Literally turn it on and off again. That's super wild.
Yep.
Thanks, everybody. I was making a joke about not knowing how to kick a home run, but it was lost on everyone because I was mute apparently, but I wasn't. So, right on. Yeah, I'll start from the beginning. I've definitely had a unconventional career path. I started in game development before I was legally allowed to be paid for it. My brother was in the industry. I thought it was super cool. So I started working on PC games and educational software when I was 11. And literally the way that they would pay me is I would go out to Los Angeles to a company called Way Forward, which I heard Joel mention, that my brother was a creative director of. And at the time, I was just super psyched to be part of the industry at all and be connected in any way. So I was literally happy to do game testing on like the worst educational software in the world. And the gig was if I worked hard for a week and I would come in and hang out with them the entire time from my spring break, or I'd come in for summer vacations. At the end of the week, they'd go to Target or GameStop and I would pick one game and they would buy that one game for me. My Mario Kart 64 is how I got that game. And then the worst regret of my life was I bought Final Fantasy VIII instead of Lunar Silver Star Story Complete, which that was my lesson in bad spending, or I guess in whatever that was. Like I did the math at one point. It was like 10 cents an hour. It was like worse than Napoleon Dynamite. And I was like, dude, this is the act perfect because that's a perfect preparation for the gaming industry, as you heard from everybody else. It's like dive, dip, and dodge your way through like layoffs and crazy chaos and jumping from job to job, all that awesome stuff that I think we've all had to deal with. So I worked as much as I could at Way Forward off and on through various roles, level design, eventually associate production work, game design. I had a chance to create a couple games at Way Forward, which was really cool. Mighty Flip Champs was both me and my brother, and it was a team of like 5 people. We cranked the entire game out on DSiWare. And another called Lit, which I actually worked on later in my career with them, which was really, really cool. I had a lot of pressure though in school to go to college, namely the college we all went to at Bethel. Everybody in my family went, and I was told basically like, you have to go to college. So my 2 experiences with school and games were not great. In high school, I was told to pick a different career on a career day. They said, what do you want to do? And I said, I want to design video games when I grow up. I want to work in the gaming industry. Literally, my teacher told me, pick a different career, that doesn't count. And I said, then I'll be a comedian. And they said, great, please write a paper. And I said, I will. I'll write the best paper ever. And at the time, I'd already shipped games. Like I literally had shrink-wrapped copies of games that I had shipped on Game Boy Color, and I was being not a real job. And I was like, this is super weird. So then I went to at Bethel, where I found a really awesome couch to crash on, which was Josh's couch over in the hall that Joel was part of. They basically adopted me over from a different hall. And I spent my entire time in college. I do not recommend you do this, especially not at an expensive private school. Wind Waker, Halo 1 with Network Play, which was incredible before Xbox Live was around, and foosball, attending any classes. So basically I paid for college.
Halo 2 came out our freshman year, didn't it? Or was that our sophomore year that Halo 2 came out?
Halo 1 network connected on LAN.
Yeah.
Xboxes against other people on the LAN.
Okay.
I was already gone to California when Halo 2 came out, and then I was playing that
okay.
like
okay.
free. So I would not recommend doing that, paying private school money just to eat pizza and crash on your friend's couch that you've been doing since you were like 10 anyways. Like, why do that in a more expensive place? I learned there, namely like playing Halo and all that, I think actually benefited me more than I was going for like a music degree because I had a $500 scholarship, which was no good at a college that cost $1 billion to go to. So I kind of squandered that, but I felt like I had to go to college. It was what I was supposed to do. Once I kind of got the system and realized like, hey, what I want to do is actually make video games. Just jumped into the deep end. I took my car, went to Los Angeles. I got to LA with like 300 in my pocket and had to basically tell the apartment that I was staying at that I didn't have enough money for rent yet, but that was coming. I had a job with Way Forward. It was a longer term project for attacking the power of Juju on Game Boy Advance. I was going to work on. So I had a level design project there. I knew I had money coming in, so I figured I'd just go for it. And then when I was doing game development, basically everybody kept saying you have too many opinions. You keep like yelling about a bunch of stuff in games. Why don't you do something in games journalism? And I was like, oh, I actually really, really want to. I think that'd be super fun. So I started working for free for a random website called Nintendo Insider. I think it still exists, but it's just a fan site. And again, it was like working for free, which is this common thing in my career, I guess, just like experience for no pay or for N64 games or overrated PS1 games. And I worked for free for that, which got me the in to basically start working at IGN as freelance. And at the time, IGN actually said, we call it freelance for a reason because free is in the name. So I didn't get paid at all at IGN either on free. So at the time I was working at GameStop, trying to still go to college because I was holding on to that, working at Way Forward, and then working at IGN freelance. And something had to give, and eventually I just worked on the project until it was done. Offer at IGN. So I spent 6 years at IGN on the Nintendo team, right during the launch of Nintendo Wii. So I was there at the end of GameCube and then all of the Wii life cycle, basically. So I was there for that crazy chaos. That was super, super fun. And then this crazy company called Apple announced their iPhone, and they were like, hey, instead of needing a dev kit and spending all this money to become a developer, it's like whatever, $100 or something. Yes.
Mark, yeah, 1 second, Mark. Your started crackling a bit. Can you do just a mute yourself and unmute really fast?
Oh, that's a dangerous game. Let me see.
Try again. You talk? No, that was a dangerous game.
I know it was. Now?
Oh.
We good?
It's better now. Just maybe talk a little slower, maybe it'll less crackle. I know.
Right on. I don't think where I was at. Apple had unveiled the phone and basically were like, hey, the dev kits are super cheap and you go make games on a super low price to be a developer. And at the time, me and my editor-in-chief at IGN were like, we either need to go work for this company or we need to immediately make a game because this is going to blow up. Because the price, I mean, we don't have to get all into it just in my spiel here, but it was super risky and near impossible to put a game out back before the App Store and before digital took over, right? Like you couldn't. Can you hear me okay or no?
Yeah, I'm gonna have you disconnect and reconnect from the channel. I'll do another invite to speak. So, what we may have missed in there is that at IGN, the iPhone had just came out, and they were just talking about possibly gaming in the app stores or games in the app store for iOS. And so that was where him and his buddy Matt were talking about heading over there. Let's see. He gets back in. Try now.
This is me having a conversation with myself.
There you go. Much better. Okay.
Nobody touch anything. I don't know what's going on. This is crazy. Yes. Long story short, we decided we were either going to go work for Apple or we wanted to go make something for the App Store. And kind of destiny came knocking. And my boss at the time, my editor-in-chief, got an interview with Apple. And he called me one day and said, hey, like, would you move up to Northern California and do the crazy like App Store gig? So I took that, and it was something I never thought I'd move up to NorCal. My family's all in LA. I love being in LA. I love being in gaming journalism. At the time, Apple was, I could tell there was something interesting happening there, but they definitely weren't a games company. And from there, we were off to the races. So I spent 12 years at the App Store, 12 years at Apple. This was basically working on the App Store and the front curation of all that stuff, which wasn't really a calling of mine, but I did it it was kind of fun and it felt a little bit bleeding edge at the time. And then we actually built App Store Today, which is the Today flow, the blog flow that's on App Store Today. It took like 7 years to build that and to convince everybody that it was a good idea. Way longer than it ever should, but that's the speed that Apple often moves at. So we built that, and we built it just in time for me to already know that Apple Arcade was coming along. And I had conversations with leadership on the App Store for that. And I said, look, writer, but I feel like I'm a very, very, very good games expert, game design expert. I speak developer. I've been doing this. I literally felt like I was born into it. And this is the right spot for me to be in. So I convinced them to build out a new team called Creative Production that was basically there to interface with all of Apple Arcade's developers. So me and my small team, once we started Apple Arcade, was responsible for checking quality and protecting Apple's investment across literally every game that came out on Apple Arcade, which felt like my career catching up and fast forward, getting back to doing the fun stuff that I loved. So I got to work with Devolver and a million different indie devs and just like some fantastic devs out there, and just help them make their games as awesome as possible. And in the meantime, also got to do things like arguing for controller support across all the Apple ecosystem, having cross across all the different devices. At the time, Apple Arcade was not going to have be iPhone, iPad, Mac, and Apple TV. They were like cross save optional, controller optional, and I was like, you guys, this is a major mistake. Like, we need to make this feel like a real ecosystem. So time on Apple Arcade, and then this thing Apple Vision Pro came along, and I've been doing a lot more like ecosystem content strategy style work. So I took over strategy and the game strategy for Vision Pro, which I can't anything about, unfortunately, outside of Demio was already announced, and that was a game that I battled up the chain. It went one layer before Tim Cook to have a conversation to be like, seriously, I want this game on your device. It'll be fantastic. It's an exact version of like what you need as a showpiece for mixed reality, basically. So working with the developers, creating that pitch with them, and then basically arguing it up the chain to try to get funding for it. That was, I think, the last actual thing I did for my job before leaving for Disney. And then speedball this part, especially just making sure that my internet connection doesn't freak out or something random. Disney is amazing and ridiculous, and I don't know if I recommend it to anybody, and I also might be jumping back there again in a couple of weeks, so we'll see how that all goes. But I was working at running my own business, and I saw a post from a buddy of mine who's like, hey dude, you should really chat with somebody at Disney. I thought it was an Imagineering gig, and it turned out a new group that they were creating called Next Generation Storytelling, which was their answer to the, but they were never interested in doing the metaverse. It was another, and this is where a lot of the Apple Arcade stuff came in, it was connected ecosystem play. And they haven't talked a lot about it, but some of what Bob Chapek did mention was things like what you watched on Disney Plus would be part of your kind of persistent profile and would pay off when you go to the parks. So if I watch a lot of Star Wars, then when I go to the parks on Galaxy's Edge, I would have a different experience than somebody else would that isn't a Star Wars fan. Kind of gamifying all of Disney as a platform was a super cool concept. And I had, I went over as VP of Next Generation Storytelling. I immediately hired a ton of people that were all on the creative side. So I was like, all right, Josh and Joel, as soon as we get engineering going, let's friggin' go. This will be awesome. I built up my creative team in the meantime. I was just onboarding my 15th person. They didn't even have hardware yet. Monday night was a random night, and it just was an article came out that said Bob Iger's back and Bob Chapek is out. And texting with some of my bosses, and I was like, it's bad, right? Like we're like Bob Chapek's baby. Like his legacy is Next Generation Storytelling. Monday morning, Kareem Daniels, who runs all of DMED, Disney Media Entertainment Division, was out, and then we got the word silently, maybe about 3 weeks later, that our group was just going to get demolished. So we all got laid off as a way to recoup well into into hundreds of millions of dollars of budget. They could just be like, we'll get rid of everybody and we'll kill this thing. The guts to connected ecosystem, and as I sort of alluded to, it seems like maybe they're going to try and change it into something different in the future, which would kind of be interesting. But it was just very quickly like, hey, this group is gone. This entire initiative is gone. Thanks, everybody. And I literally had somebody on my team who's like, I haven't gotten my hardware yet, and I just left my other job. Would love to help you find another gig, but it's crazy. So that was the first time I'd felt any of the sting from like layoffs in this industry. not the only one in this call to have dealt with that. Like, it's a very common thing. All I can say from my time at Disney was, like, it was crazy. I made a ton of connections with a lot of people. The severance was great, so I'm enjoying a lot of fun time with my kids right now while I figure out the next step. But man, it is like, whether you decide to do the whole college or not college thing, or where you go with your industry, like what industry you pick, like, network, build your connections, because that is, at least for me, it has been my life. Literally just be on the phone with people from 70 different companies. As quick as I could crank them out, I was having conversations with people to figure out what was next. So that's just, I think, the biggest piece of advice I could give. It was totally insane and crazy, much like most of my career, going from like journalism to podcast hosting to random video stuff to app store to next gen storytelling and all this stuff. I would do it all again 100%. And for me right now, it's actually more like, how do I pick the thing I want to do next, rather than, man, I wish I could find something. Because there's Nate talking like 2 weeks ago about like maybe cranking on a random side project, right? So like, it's industry. There's a million things that are out there. And I guess my like ADD personality just wants to like try them all. So I guess that's what I'm on the path to do. But yeah, it's been pretty wild.
It has been wild. I think we all have ADHD or ADD in some fashion, I think, is what keeps us going, probably. But
I'm
Mark,
glad I don't have to enforce that specific issue with all of you. But
yeah,
that's
right.
that's my one regret. I got my diagnosis at 42, and I could have used it 24 years earlier. And one of the things the neuropsych told me was, "Hey, we're going to finish this exam, but just so you know, you have ADHD, and so do 80% of your coworkers."
Okay, well, Mark answered one of the follow-on questions. Mark, I'm going to have you disconnect and reconnect. Your internet started diving again there. So, follow-on question then for Josh, Nate, and Carlos. We're all either over 40, closing in on 40, right around that age. So to give us some context to people watching. So we've been in this 15 to 20 years, in essence. The question is, would you do it again? What would you change? Do you wish you would have maybe not gone into games industry, not gone into computer science, all that kind of stuff? So, Nate, thoughts?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'll go first. No, I wouldn't change anything. I'm really happy with my path that I took. So I'm the, again, because I know people have been popping in and out and whatever, but I'm the non-college educated one. I'm the self-taught, open up a book, get it done kind of person. But at the same time, I'm a get in at an entry level and get paid to learn. A lot of the guys here on the call got paid to learn. That's what you want to do. And that is possible. You don't get paid a lot. Like Mark, he didn't get paid anything. That's, who cares when you're young and you're just trying to get experience and just trying to learn from your elders. That's the way to do it. So I can't say enough about experience and just kind of getting out there. If you can't find a job, luckily nowadays, with computer science, with coding, we have amazing things like Chat GPT, where you can just have a conversation with an AI and it'll teach. Hell, it teaches me stuff every single day. It's fantastic. I ask it all kinds of random things. And you've got things like Code Academy. You got online code editors in every language. I don't know. Probably everybody here is interviewed with Facebook, but they probably do it with other or Meta, whatever it is now. They call themselves whatever they want. I know what they are. All the other FANG companies. If you guys haven't heard of FANG, FANNG, is it? So yeah, okay. So Facebook, Apple, Netflix. What's the other N?
No, it's two
You guys
A's.
got the
Facebook.
Oh,
Two
two
A's.
A's. I'm sorry. Apple, Amazon. I'm sorry. Apple, Amazon, Netflix, Google. Okay, so that's what FANG means. If you guys have ever heard that.
There's
so-
FAMAG as well. There's an M version where they throw Microsoft in there. I forget which one.
Oh,
that one is.
Microsoft. Yeah, sure. Yeah, throw off
Yeah.
the whole easier-ish to say word. So, they interview you like within a online code editor and checking your code right there within the interview, which can be pretty nerve-wracking. But my point is that all that stuff is all online. Like, it's an amazing time to learn. So many free tools. Unity's free, Unreal's free. Godot, if you like that, that sort of thing. But there's so many tools and so many YouTube courses. Everybody on this call, we didn't have that when we were going to college and on the comeuppance or whatever you call it. So I mean, take advantage of these tools. Honestly, it all comes to what's inside you and what is driving you, what your passion is, and just sitting down and learning, opening up your computer and just being dedicated. That's to me, that's what it all boils down to. Even if you go to college, they can spoon feed you the knowledge, but you still got to be dedicated to following through with the project.
Yeah, I think that has probably been one of the hallmarks of everyone on this call is that I know we all are exceptionally hard workers, work maybe most likely way too much to the detriment of other areas of our life. But some of us have figured out how to balance that out. So others of us have not. So, but the idea that you can just go to school and expect it to be spoon fed to you, not a thing. Got to work hard. Josh, would you do it again?
Yeah, yeah, I would absolutely do it again. I enjoy my work. One of the greatest pleasures in life, I guess, is learning. I think, and I think that we're in an industry that you have to continue to learn all the time, or you'll be left behind. Um, so I enjoy that aspect of it. I'm sure that's true of plenty of other professions as well, but not all of them. Uh, I think what it really comes down to for whether this is the industry for you is what your goals are, and like what Nate was saying, like what's inside you. Is this something that you're passionate about? Do you have to work hard? But I guess I'm probably one of the ones that has tried even harder to put in my time and not overwork myself. I definitely work hard while I'm at work. I probably do more than 40 hours a week, the 40 to 45 hours a week tune, but I'm not one of the ones that's going crazy to 60 hours a week or whatever. I highly value my time with my family and so forth. So clearly, as I'm doing this at night and leaving them on their own. Um, but yeah, I think that there is room for it, um, to be able to set your boundaries. But you have in order to do that, you have to earn it, and you have to be working hard every day. And yeah, I'd absolutely do it again. And I enjoy my work. Worked with a lot of smart people at a lot of smart companies.
Yeah. Carlos.
So it's pretty complicated. I would do it again, but there are decisions along that I wish I could have done it better or differently. And I think the real struggle is that, like many other creative industries, it's even though it's technical, even though you're doing it very frequently high-end math and software engineering, it's still a creative industry. It's still a passion project for so many people. And then by definition, that makes them vulnerable to exploitation as employees. And the game industry at large, very famously, has exploited that. Right? It's better in some ways for engineers than it is for other creative industries. Actors are on strike right now. The writers just wrapped up their strike, but they were near the brink. Musicians have almost no known path, easy path to make a living from their music right now. But a software engineer in general, if you don't like the treatment that you're getting from your game company, and frequently I did not like the treatment I was getting from my game company, and my family would pay the price. Like you always can go and get a job outside of the games industry and be treated pretty well. So it's really hard because I still have that passion. There's few things even not making a game that keep me as interested, keep me as stimulated, keep me as passionate as like making real time high performance applications. And so it's simple for me. This is something that I really want to be involved in, but there's there's no part of me that would that would think it was worth it to crunch on a game, to the harm of my family or to not see my kids, right? Or as just as the frequent tune that I hear from so many people in our industry, which is small, like at the cost of all of my 20s, right? Um, so it's difficult.
Yeah, it's a lot. Nate, I don't know if you answered it or not. Did you answer? Yeah. Would you do it again, Nate?
Me? Yeah, I answered the
You
question.
answered. Okay, so I'm going to try and get to a couple questions now from our audience that they've submitted beforehand. I'm going to start with a very simple one. And actually, I'm going to kind of tie two together. One is if you're a high school student or even in college, what should you be doing to prepare yourself to get a job in the industry? What would be like the number one thing that you should be doing to get started? This is a very common question. Everyone hears that. And I will dovetail that with a very small question for the engineers in the room. What language, software or coding language do you think would, if it's tied to that, what language should you be learning in the meantime? Josh.
Let's see. So I am trying to remember the first question, but the second question, what language, which was not the main point, but that totally depends on what you want to get into. If you want to get into data science or something, you're gonna want to lean into to Python and R and statistical, like very mathy types of languages. If you want to get into low level, very very highly performant code, I would tend to go towards C++, making sure that you're looking at the more modern versions of C++, for sure. What should I even say? So my main point here is that you need to learn how to find the right tool for the job. A lot of languages exist for a reason, because each one is kind of specialized towards specific things. Some of them are more general purpose and get used a lot more, but there's a reason that so many exist, because they're all useful for something. So one of the big skills is learning how to find the right tool for the job and being able to put yourself in a position to use that tool.
Yeah, I always talk about what I learned at Bethel with our degree was I didn't learn a language, I learned how to learn a language. And that was, I kind of leaned into that. And it really demystifies a lot of what we do within education. And so you can just walk into any coding language and be like, I can do that. I can do that. Hand me the C++ for Java developers. Remember that famous book that we all got right after school? Because we all learned in Java in our degree, and our first job was C++. And we hadn't done more than, I think, a semester of C++ for intro to computer science, or computer science 101, I think was our only exposure to C++ at college. So you just jump into the deep end. So yeah. So Josh,
Can I jump in on that one, Joel?
yeah, please.
So programming is terrible, and it's extremely frustrating, especially when you first start it. So people are going to get really frustrated opening a book and trying to stay awake reading it. The way I learned programming, which I encourage other people to do because it'll get you passionate about it. I was fortunate enough to learn it on Flash, which was, the most basic of the basic, easy of the easy, get you into actually learning what an if statement is, what's a variable, what's a for loop, all of that. So I would start with fun first, especially if you're a high schooler. And if it's like your first foray, I would jump into, and these guys may laugh at me about it, but I mean, I would jump into Roblox. I would jump into Minecraft coding, anything that's fun, because it sucks at first. And it's extremely frustrating. So learn what a variable is, learn what a string is, what's an int, all that. Go ahead, Carlos.
I would like to kind of second this. Basically, my recommendation is to make a game or make a mod that connects you to the community in any way. And there will be a technical path that'll get you in there. But the thing to do to get it, how do I break in the games industry? Make games. And I'm not trying to sound condescending or terse, but I'm just saying all of the interns that I've worked with and that got hired, all the really strong new candidates, all the people who already said, I talked to your graphics engineer on, I don't know, on whatever game they're actually playing together, right? They know them online. Just start making a game and whatever works from you. And go download Unreal, start working with blueprints, drawing a picture. Download Unity. They've got a scripting language in at least 2 places. C#, and I don't remember what the other one. Josh already brought up Python. Python is literally designed to make programming easier for people who are not software engineers. If you're going to go AAA, before you leave university, know C and C++ and what it means to actually, like, you're not a programmer. You manage memory, and that's it. And don't let anybody tell you differently. But that's it. The thing to do is to make games and even just learn, do I even like doing this? Because you might not. You might decide, like, oh, I'm glad to have this skill set, but I actually like playing games. You might decide that you enjoy some other part of doing it. But the most important thing is it's really easy to mod games. It's really easy to pull down a couple of different public engines and really start working with them. I'd say the Open 3D engine is a little bit targeted for professionals still, but Unity and Unreal, it's pretty easy to grab those and dive into it. iOS development's pretty friendly. Start to do that and just start making a game, and that will begin to give you the questions that you need to answer, including, do I like this?
Yeah, I think the coding answer or whatever could go on pretty much any path you want, but I think Nate nailed it, is find something that's fun and do that. And dovetailing with what Carlos said, is find a community to contribute or participate in, and use the communities and that fun element to do something interesting. And then, but that's really from like a development standpoint. Mark, non-developer, what do you think?
Microphone working again? I don't know what's going on, but just want to make sure.
Good enough.
Oh, weird. I think the biggest secret that I could unveil is or reveal is there's no moment when whether it's getting a degree or hitting whatever landmark it is, where they open the secret doors to the industry. It's welcome to the club. You're here. There's Peter Molyneux sitting right there. There's Tim Sweeney. He's hanging out over there grabbing a drink. It doesn't exist. So if you don't play your cards right when it comes to networking or using the opportunities you have, I think school is a fantastic one for internships, for have those times when you're there to learn. And a lot of people out there who have worked on a lot of different projects. Maybe they're literally professors, maybe they're professionals, whatever it is, and they actually get a kick out of being able to teach and pass on to the next generation, right? So finding those people, because no matter what, whether you get a degree or you don't, you're gonna come out you're gonna go, okay, now what? One is in that spot, right? So your hope is that if you're going through the college route, equipping yourself with tools and hopefully ready to go once you're out the other end, to be okay, I've proven myself, and hopefully I've got a bit of a network built up or people that are interested because of this program. But on the flip side, if you don't, it's the exact thing where you need to know people. I've never, for an example, I don't know, show of hands on the chat or whatever, but every one of them I've ever gotten, I knew somebody who vouched for me for that job. Literally one. Okay, Carl, we worked in 1,000 places, right? So, okay, all right, maybe we're batting 500 with you. But I'm for me, I'm oh, I know somebody there that even if I'm the most qualified person in the world, there's a maze, tons of people out there trying to get the spot that you want. So getting noticed is really difficult, and there's different ways to do it. Having a degree, it could be one. Knowing some of the people who work there could be another one. So I would totally echo that. Get your hands dirty. If you're excited about trying to make a game, start right now. If there's a certain company you're excited about, dude, them on LinkedIn, follow them on Twitter, or start responding to all their posts. Get to know these people. I've literally been hired through relationships like that, and I've actually hired people on my side because I was dude, this guy won't shut up about being in our IGN comments. Who is this guy? And he became one of our community leaders on the Nintendo team because he was vocal in the community when we were working on all of our articles and everything at IGN. So I really use that as a, like, you don't have to wait to start your career. You can do that in tandem with whatever it is you're working on.
Yeah. Yeah, almost a little bit of stalking action on LinkedIn, maybe. Start pinging and sending some messages, but
Why not?
Yeah,
Well,
I think
and these guys also talked about networking. Get out there, go to conferences, network. Like you said, Joel, hit up people on LinkedIn. If you show a lot of interest and really try to hit up networking with people, and hey, you tell people what you're learning, what you're getting into, that really goes a long way with people like us, because we're looking for passionate people, and we'll help other people that are really passionate. But you got to show it, and you got to be like, hey, I'm working on this, I'm doing that. I made this thing in Roblox, made this thing in Minecraft, I made this little program with Godot or with Unity, whatever, like, hey, I'm doing these things. Like, passion goes a long way, and just keep on networking. It's huge, huge, huge. So these guys are totally right.
It's too hard to say like, hi, can I get a job? No, and then quit. Like a little hustle and pestering is required. It's too hard to do, right? So you can't give up easily. We recognize that.
So we have a question from Roro Moo asking, how did we all translate passion for gaming into motivation to work? Because I think I'm at the core of this is all of us played a lot of video games, like a lot. Untold amount of hours playing growing up in middle school, high school, even in college, to Mark's, to chagrin to his degree. How did we translate that passion and excitement for gaming into motivating to work in the games industry? Carlos.
All right. Sorry. So I only know because you guys brought up when Halo 2 was released, and I know for a fact it was not when y'all were freshmen. So when I was acting, the thing that I loved about it was every line in the script was fought over, right? Constant people really passionate, fighting over every detail, every bit of blocking, every bit of lighting was fought over. And so then I was at my second internship in our computer science program, and Halo Bungie was releasing all these developer diaries and videos about how they were making their stuff, and the first trailer for Halo, a dropship for Halo 2, a dropship comes out of the sky, and there's all these clouds and this kind of soft lighting, and as it's getting ready to enter into combat, there was just a brush over chimes. And then they said that they fought in the studio for 2 weeks over those chimes, whether or not they should be there, whether it breaks the scene completely. And as soon as I found out that, like, not just music, but design, art, and engineering, and production and management were all fighting over the chimes, I'm like, that's what I want to do. And I was totally interested in playing games, but I wasn't graduating computer science to get into games. But that's what got me, was I wanted to know that people weren't in it just for like, oh, I want the stock, I want the bonus, I want to, retire early or something like that. They actually really cared down to the pixel, down to the data stream that would make the audio. That's what they were passionate about. And I haven't worked on a game calm enough to have people not flipping out about every pixel on the screen and every sound cue. They're like, okay, guys, we can take it a little easy. But that part has been really great.
Yeah, I feel like
that's how it translated for me.
Yeah, I think the summation of that is to say that we played games, so we recognized art. We understood what a creative product was, and then when we got the opportunity to make that object, we took our very ho-hum job of typing code into a machine and realizing that we could make art with that code and contributing to something pretty awesome. And that was very motivating to know that at the end, hopefully at the end of the road, which it can be a very grueling 1, 2, 3, 4, 5-year road, hopefully you have a piece of art that you can sign off on and say, this is amazing, and I participated in the creation of this work of art that other people are enjoying. So it's not just about playing. You take those experiences of playing and you're able to translate them into the creative process and get excited about creating at the end of the day. I mean, I didn't think I was going to be like, I'm not a good artist, I'm not a good writer, I'm not really good at UI and UX. For all the people who use LeagueOS, they know this. But from a development, like engineering perspective, I think I'm pretty good, and I can use my skills there to contribute to something that is artistic and beautiful. Nate, Mark, you guys want to weigh in on that one or no? How you translate your passion for gaming? Mark, I can't hear you again, but no, I can't hear you. Oh, no, maybe.
Am I? Yes.
Yeah, there you go.
All right, dude. I'm okay. Weird. My biggest hang up was, and I'm even seeing it in chat, talking about like, man, what about math class and calculus and this? Like, are these barriers? I came from a family that was a lot of artists, and my big hang up was I can never be in the video game industry because I'm not an artist. So I came from that flip side of it. And it was crazy to then see the world that is open to you if you really find what your why is. Like, I was starting to write it to Red comment here, and I saw Carlito, you're in there, so I was like, all right, I'm just gonna back off and let you chat engineering side. But if you can find like your why you're passionate about it, and why it's more than just I like to play this game, I like this series, I'm a Nintendo fan, I'm a Halo fan, whatever it is, like part of the industry, if we're speaking on games specifically, sleep over thinking about, and the parts that you feel like are just that, like that is in your soul, what you're connected to, that for me was enough to propel me through, because it's going to happen no matter what job you pick. There's going to be really, really high days and really low days. So don't love it and you don't know your why, like why are you in this industry and why do you care about it, it's gonna be real tough to jump on and go to work on a day where you're not feeling it, right? So that's a for me. But I just attracted to the allure of game, taking the brains of these crazy people who have made insane games and just being part of it. And that's, I think, also why like my career has taken me across all these different parts of the industry, of like journalism to guest hosting to production and all that. I dig all of it. So that's been part of it for me. But make sure you find the reason that you want to jump out of bed and actually do it every single day, because much to what Carlos said, like the industry has no problem chewing you up and spitting you out. And it's different from when you used to, work as hard as you could for a gold master, and then the game is on the shelves, like as hard as you can, and they're like, sweet, next season starts tomorrow, like let's start working on the next crunch, right? It's never done. So protect your time and make sure you're in it for a good reason that you're excited about, basically.
Yeah, you said a keyword there. I'm not sure many people who are that much younger than us will know. A gold master is basically when they stamp the DVD and they put it on the shelves. So that is the go-to-market game. And in the older days, when we had like the Wii or previous PlayStation 1, 2 CDs or even cartridges, there was no over-the-air updates. So what got sent out to Best Buys and stuff, that was the game. There was no bug fixing. So Gold Master was a much higher standard of quality on the production side of things 20 years ago than it is now. So very different experience. And now we can launch Cyberpunk 20 whatever, and it can just be absolute trash, and we'll fix it a year later. So very different environment. Yeah, everyone's laughing. Yeah. Here's a good one. Any tips for game designers who aren't confident in their skills? So game designer. So Mark, I'm going to go back to you on this one.
A follow up, like what? Okay.
Yeah, you're fine. Sorry, your audio like pause. Your audio pauses for like the 10 seconds. So just start rambling and then jump in.
It's just super weird. The first I have honestly is back to the person who asked it, which is like, what facet of design are you interested in? For me at least, and I know because I've talked with Nate about it just recently, like when you've got that game design itch, it's more about having too many universes in your brain that you're trying to get out there. Like, I would pause time and work on 100 games right now at a time, right? So I think that actually speaks to it a little bit too, of like, do you any idea you've got, if this is about being a game designer from a really high concept level, first focus on doing something different from what's already out there, even if it's taking a genre that's established and then finding a unique spin on it. I think figuring out a reason why somebody would play your game versus somebody else's is super, super important. But then once you feel like you do have that, like write it down. I've had 100 ideas where I thought, I'll never forget this. Of course, I'm going to remember this one. This is like a super cool idea that I can't wait to make. And if I don't write I'll think about something else and it'll be gone real quick. And then I think from there it's prioritizing and figuring out if you're going to go build something on your own, what you really want to build right now, because it is a passion project and it's a slog and it's never done as fast as you want it to be done. So really make sure you're picking a shop that you're invested in. And the other one, just like, I play everything. Like, I play retro games, I play arcade, I play VR, I play tons of itch.io games, Pico 8. I've got a stack of LCD games. Like, I try to just play literally everything because there's little pieces, just like when you go to school, you're learning from tons of different textbooks or professors. Games for me, like, that's my curriculum. So I'm constantly going in and trying to like make, whether it's literal notes or mental notes of like, this is something really interesting Dungeons and Dragons, the LCD game from like 1986 did that was super, super cool. Like, I can't wait to sprinkle that into some design idea eventually. The more you play and the more you dissect things from a game design standpoint, the more you kind of like start to see the code, right? Like the way Neo sees the code, like I can kind of see why this and why this doesn't. And you can even start to see with games that aren't out yet. And you're like, man, I saw that gameplay trailer and like they are just missing the boat on these 3 pieces of the game. And then you wait a year later and the game comes out and you're like, they never fixed it, right? So yeah, for me at least, it's just games are the curriculum, and then when it really comes to ideas that you want to create, organize your keep them and really focus on the thing that you think you could practically execute on, and that's an idea that you really want to put the time in to deliver. Like super high level, but yeah.
To keep going on that, doing the good old fashioned writing ideas down, getting out pieces of paper, and just making wireframes. I mean, as Mark just pointed out, we've been talking about game design lately. So I mean, this is a prototype I just made that I showed him, and it started on paper. I always draw out pictures, very horrible handwriting of mine, writing out notes, just writing out ideas, just getting out paper and just putting some ideas down, thinking about your systems, thinking about screen flow, boring stuff like that. How does a hero manage your inventory? How does the metagame work? How do you equip stuff? How do you traverse the land? What does it look like? What do you think? Just anything. So you don't have to just like, oh, I got to code something. No, get it down on paper. I mean, I've been doing this for 20 years. So get it on paper and just mess around. And Mark, do you want to add to that?
Since my internet's so crappy, I feel like I need to give you guys like 30-second warning anytime I want to jump in. So specifically, if you look up a developer, Capybara Games, they've made a game called Heroes of Might and Magic, which is fantastic on Nintendo DS. They made a game called Critter Crunch. They've got a ton of games. They've got one on Apple Arcade called Grindstone. I had this like conversation with these guys with IGN forever ago, and I was like, every make just has this purposeful nuance to it that I can't put my finger on. And I've seen it from other developers since then. And I was just like, what is it about your game design method that I'm missing? Because you clearly are doing something that other people are not. They had their secret sauce was they paper prototype every game they make first. And you can't do that necessarily with Halo, for example, right? But if you've got something that's a high concept game design and there's a way in your mind where you think you could paper prototype this, like literally bust out index cards and it on the fly, try to build your game in analog first. That saves time on code. It saves a lot of time on art assets. Like, you don't have to learn an engine. You can literally build it and see if those pieces work and if they're fun. That's literally how we made Mighty Flip Champs, the game that I was talking to you about that my brother and I worked on. Cycling like a spiral notepad. And I was like, this would be, you could make a level and then flip the notepad and the next part of the level is there. So you basically could almost like a flip book, bring pieces of the level in front of you. And we were like, that's perfect. It could work in that exact phase. And it was a Nintendo DS game where the top screen would come, I think the bottom screen would come up to the top screen, but it was based on a paper design of like, here's a level. If we flip it up, does your character survive if they find the gaps between the level design? That was the whole high concept. We did the entire thing in paper, and we knew it would be fun before we ever wrote a single piece of code or touched a pixel.
Yeah,
so I know what all you kids are thinking of right now. You got your hot open world, Modern Warfare, first person shooter. I know all the best vision. No, you need to start simple. You got to do simple, stupid games. Do Flappy Bird, do Minesweeper, do all kinds of simple, small games first. Start small. I can't encourage that enough. Start small. You'll get overwhelmed very quickly. You won't know where to start. Just move a square around a screen, click on the edges, make some stupid little game that's, very just very basic. Start basic, and then you get that win, and you feel good, and you're like, all right, let's make the square do this, and you try to make it what we call make it feel juicy a little bit more. Add some effects, add some sound. You're like, oh, this is actually pretty cool. I really like it. And then you're really proud of this simple, small thing that you made. So I just want to encourage all the, and this is something that we probably all learned in this room. Is just like we think too big sometimes, and you need to just start simple, start small.
Jump in one more time without the internet breaking.
As far as you can.
Nope.
I was just gonna say, and take it as far along the process as you can. Like the difference between starting a game and the difference and ending a game. There's hard lines between those development processes, right? Even before you start showing it to your very good friend who's a very good person who's nice to you and kind, gives constructive feedback. And now you're going to show it to a complete stranger who's willing to say, this sucks, right? Like you want to take, even if it's a small game, show it to at least one person you know and at least one person you don't know. You can call that shipping, but take it as far down the process as you can. It's very important to share it because very few people are ever making a game and they're the only one who's going to play. You're always doing that for somebody else.
So I want to kind of bring this conversation into alignment with some of our other questions and overarching ideas is getting into the industry. And so there's a lot of questions in the forums that have been submitted about whether to go into indie game development or whether to go into like AAA big dogs kind of thing. I think what I'm hearing is that you kind of have to do both. You should be looking for that job that pays for you to learn, but you're also going to have a chance of getting that job if you do some prep work in high school and college in tinkering with something and getting something onto your resume or into your experience in game development. So you have to do a bit of do it yourself, go it alone, maybe with some people. I don't know. Where is the line here, guys? Where do we do this? Go ahead, Mark.
It was what I was gonna jump in with there. I was gonna bring up a name. Eric Barone is his name. He's the developer Concerned Ape. He's the one who made Stardew Valley. This up because of the chat that's happening on the side here with Land H2O and just being like, and I don't know, Land, on your side if you're more game design, if you're more an engineer, but I think it applies to anybody here too. I have been in this industry since I was like 11. I'm 40 and I don't plan on stopping anytime soon. I can't create art and I have no idea how to code. And I'm doing just fine, relatively speaking, and found many things that I'm interested in this industry. I don't Eric Barone does it. He's amazing. I'd love to buy. He's one of the few people I haven't talked to on the indie space that has been on iOS and has been around for a long time that I've just never been introed with and had a chance to talk to. I would love to have a beer with him and be like, so are you like a robot or like an alien from like another planet? Because like, how are you doing the art, the music, the programming? You had the concept like that. So I agree. I think it is a mix of networking. If you can get somebody to pay you to learn, fantastic. Find one of those gigs and just like leech onto it, right? But the other thing, at least for me, that I think would be important to hammer home is like the things I'm really interested in, and I also know exactly where my limits are. So like I know where I would be an A+ player in an A+ position, and it is never going to be trying to crack open a book in C++ and learning that. Like it just is not, right? But I could totally find a Joel or a Josh, and they can completely be that side of the coin to my crazy ADD like gameplay obsessed brain, right? So I would where you think you might over index, and maybe it's too early and you're experimenting, which is completely great. But figure out where and where you think you might be the most passionate, because that'll be a lot easier for you to deep dive into, and then use that. And you can always, especially now, like you can find people out there who want to collaborate on a game or work on a game jam with you or something like that. So figure out what you are super excited about and what your A plus spot is, and play that position, and then you can always branch out. But it's a lot of what Nate said too, like try to do all of it, you're going to get crushed under the weight of your scope and of what you're trying to build. I will shut up in a second, but I saw somebody on Twitter, I'm blanking on the name of it, but there was a game somebody had worked on for like nearly 10 years, and he was essentially trying to be an Eric Barone, and you could tell it was awesome, and nothing else was working about the game, and it was crushing to see it, because he'd worked on it for like 10 years. He launched the game, and he's like, playing this, I spent forever on it. I really wish people would play it. I wish it was awesome. I guess I just didn't do a good enough job. And I'm like, dude, you should be completely working with somebody who can be the other pieces that strengthen you, because he's an amazing artist, right? So I'd find what you're passionate about and what you're good at, and see if you can play that position as much as possible too.
Yeah, you said one thing there, which was game jam. For those who aren't familiar, game jams are usually like small communities get together and they put a challenge in front of them to basically say, make a game either by yourself or in a small team over the course of either a day or a weekend, or maybe even a week usually. But it's usually on like the day or weekend kind of concept. So it really reduces the scope and size of a project, because you can't build an exorbitant game in a day or two. So it forces you to think small. It forces you to think really quick and simple. And that's really fun to watch some of the gameplay designs kind of evolve out of that. So for me, as an engineer and not an artist, what I would do is I would make games that was basically shapes oriented, circles, squares, diamonds, like no graphics, nothing fun. Go from there. And some of our other friends that we've had in years past have done games that have been completely text driven. So there is no graphics. It's just gameplay loops with text and narration and stuff. So games can take all sorts of formats and structure, and your level of skill of what you can do can follow, wherever you want it to go. Yeah. Let's see.
I just had one quick follow up for this,
Yeah.
in terms of kind of the general career advice. Like, my wife, who is also recovering from COVID right next to me, a few years ago, she said like the wisest thing I think I've ever heard, which is everyone is just making it up as they go along, right? There's not actually any good rules, and I'm sorry to say it, but there is. This is true for like every industry, every government, all history you've ever read. Everyone's just making it up. There's not rules, right? The best science we have is just a high probable prediction of a measurement it's kind of made in the past. We don't actually know anything. So I'm just trying to say, like, you're gonna have your path, and it's gonna work for you. It's gonna have a different set of pain, and then there's the stuff that's higher probability. Like having a college degree, it really will help you, and unfortunately, in the United States, it will probably also saddle you with debt. But computer science and anesthesia are two of the things where that debt will get eliminated by your own work, right? You will probably pay for it. But I work next to a guy at Havoc who literally would support developers using the physics engine and had math books open all the time, just teaching himself more and more math, not trivial stuff, high level stuff. He solved fifth order equations in some miraculous new way, and Google just said, "You're ours now," and just threw all the money in the world at him, right? Like, people just do weird stuff, right? One of my skills is I'm simply frequently like the angry guy who says, "We don't have the tools we need. Give us more tools." And now I don't even know if it matters whether or not I have a degree or whether I'm an engineer. Everybody's really glad I gave them the tools they needed, right? So there's weird routes, but there's stuff that will help you. And if you get a computer science degree, like, it will open doors. There are kind of known paths for entering the industry that you want to know why you're not taking them. That's the whole bit. Remember, everyone's making it up.
Yeah, we're all making it up. But yeah, I think the if you do go through school, is a computer science degree necessary? Maybe not, but it certainly is an obvious road, a path into the industry. As testament to Josh, myself, and Carlos. So But there are numerous ways, right? Nate over here doesn't have a degree and got in and is now leading game design on one of the largest mobile game companies in the world. So there are infinite number of ways in, and it's really what you are, the route that's right for you. Let me see if I can find one or two more questions here. Oh yeah, okay, I wanted to hit on this one. Let's see, because we have two people who've worked on this project. I'm trying to find out who answered it. So Temptanium from Oklahoma is asking, will full body VR suits ever be a reality? So for gaming. So this one is directed both at Mark and Carlos specifically. Since you guys are on Vision Pro, which is maybe, maybe not geared specifically towards gaming immediately, but certainly is, as Apple is wont to do, trying to do what everyone else is doing, but do it slightly twisted and slightly better or slightly perfected, and trying to conquer industries without realizing it's trying to conquer industries, as it does. I say that.
At a ramble, I'll try to do a ramble running start and then get out of the way since my internet's weird. I would want to follow up the question that they asked with another one, which is
I want to preface you, Mark. I remember when we were first getting to know each other, we went over to your house in Minnesota, and I got to play a Virtua Boy. So old school, shooting red lasers into my eyes for virtual reality kind of experiences. So VR has been around for 20 plus years in essence. So we've been through it all and seen all of that. But now you've got to touch the latest and greatest. So there's the setup for you.
Yeah. The question that I would flip back is bringing up like a haptic suit, which is like very like Ready Player One, right? So if you ask the question why, like always, like what's the motivation of the question? Are we gonna have a haptic suit? Like, will I ever feel like we did on Sega Genesis? I'm blanking on what it's called. Sega Genesis had the chest adapter where if you got like shot, it would rumble, and it's like, oh, you feel all the attacks in Street Fighter and stuff. So like, I'm sure somebody would be happy to sell you that in now or in the future to varying levels of success or immersion through that. I've seen the crazy treadmills where you stand on them and you basically are running in VR and all that, right? But at the end of the day, I think it comes down to the why. Like, why would you want haptic gloves versus just having traditional controllers? Well, haptic suit versus just having like what you can already honestly do in a lot of the headsets out there, which is like you're starting to get the 360 cameras that are just capturing your mocap anyways, right? The MetaQuest 3, I think, is doing a really good job with like hand tracking. I think Vision Pro has talked about like the field of depth that you've got for camera tracking. Like you can have your hands in your lap and be motion, like a pinching motion or whatever, and it's seeing it right from basically like your head down, at least down to like your waist or whatever, right? So do you want it because you want to be able to like run around and feel every punch like the old Sega Genesis commercials, or is it for a use of control and expression and data capture? Because I think we'll actually get to those way quicker than needing to convince somebody to buy a full like haptic suit or something, right? So I think we're at a really good spot for general immersion and navigation across VR. I also think like people are pretty comfortable using controllers and traditional controllers, and it's really interesting too to see Apple basically be like, your best controller is your hands. And I was like, well, for playing like a first person shooter, I don't know if it is, or for like full free range movement in games, I don't know how you'll do it. But can it achieve, I think, what I think you're bringing up, which is just like capture of your essence and your movements? Like, sure, why not? I think from there, we'll just test the boundaries on what's next. But it would come down to why for me. Like, why would somebody want to plop down the money to get like a custom haptic suit or gloves or whatever the case is? And if it's transformative and it completely blows people away, then it'll succeed and it'll stick around and people will start copying it over and over until the next thing comes along, right? But I think we'll get there with the technology before we actually need like more physical peripherals on us, basically.
I 100% concur with this answer, especially about like what is the actual use case. My only addendum is if this is ever done and it was done well and it was done by anybody other than Apple with its current executive board of oversight, you would be in the midst of such a privacy violation because of the machine learning data captured against every human body. You've got bigger problems. So don't advocate for this. You don't want that. You don't need it. Vote and try and democratize AI and machine learning and the distribution of tech power. And I'm a hard no on this VR bodysuit.
Yeah.
So we can solve some other problems.
I want to add one more quick one too, which is an interesting one. So I think we have a decent amount of engineers here. My wife is also at Apple, and she works specifically with the engineers in the org that she's in. And one of the main things she gets constantly as feedback is when she gets new hires that are coming in. One of the biggest points of feedback from engineers is they go, "Oh, like Apple's serious about the privacy thing? Like we thought that was like a marketing thing, and we have." App Store side too. Like when it came to the App Store and trying to decide what stuff to surface in front of people, we knew nothing about you. Literally, like not a oh yeah, we're private, isn't that super cool? Privacy for everybody, yeah, peace. It's like no, we did not have in some cases the tools we just assumed we would have to read into the analytics and the data for everybody. So to plus one that on your side, it's like that's also a nice thing at least to know, and it's something for you to consider if you're somebody who's like engineer, but I'm only going to be like dive deep into all the analytics, like break down someone's psyche based on their like browse behavior and their interactions. Maybe Apple isn't really the right place. Maybe try a different company for that. But also, I'm wandering out of what I talked about, which is an A plus player playing an A plus position, and I should shut up about engineering. But yeah, privacy is a very real thing.
And it's not trivial. It's not trivial. It doesn't. It's not like unrelated to games, right? We make a compulsion loop. You know, within the game space, we need to know enough about human psychology that, for lack of a better term, we need to create addiction. And we just don't have a better word for it. But we create a compulsion loop. I want to play your game again. I want to participate in the game and play again, right? Like Nintendo is beautiful at this and very predictable. We shall make the player feel weak. We shall make the player feel artificially strong very quickly. Now we give them a little bit of weakness again, and now they get to feel creatively strong. And they just know the way dopamine works, the way humans work. Like, that feels great. I want to go beat Bowser again. I want to go beat Ganon again. I want to be Samus Aran again. She's always leaving her power-ups in the last planet, right? But so that level of psychology is an insight. Gamers need it too. Designers need it a lot. It comes up and needs to be taken seriously, especially with cross-reference with the kind of the pay models that we do now. Free to play, we're taking the player's time, we're taking the player's attention. We're arguably finding morally dubious ways to take the player's money. We gotta be careful.
Awesome.
I'm gonna shut myself up.
All right, I'm going to wrap this. We're at 9:34, so we're a little bit over on this time. So I'm going to ask one last thing from each of you, and this is going to have to be off the top of your head because I didn't prep you for this at all. If you were to tell, if you wanted to leave one, let's just say, link to a website or a page or a resource or an asset or something that you have found incredibly valuable in your career, or something that a kid might want to look at or take advantage of heading into the workforce or making decisions about where to go to school or whether or not to go to school, what's the one thing that you would just have to like point to them and be like, go to this website. I think there's something interesting there that could be very useful. This is tough. So what is that? What is that website? What's the URL? Oh yeah, this one's gonna be a tough one.
First, I think I have it. There are many answers to this question.
Yes.
But coming from the game design brain side of me, and in the spirit of all the like try it out and hack it together and like just try to make it work and see what you're interested in. I wish I could for you. I'll get it and I'll put it in chat. But I'm a firm believer in Pico 8. I think that is if you haven't played with it and messed around with it, it's a fake retro console. So it's an 8-bit console. And it's fantastic. It is a great way to learn basic music composing. You do all your own code, you make your own pixel art, but it's also completely open to the community. So it's a perfect example. Like if I have a game design I think would be great, I can get some pixel art and I can work with another coder and we can make that thing happen. And all the games are 8-bit. They're all in something super tiny like 24K or some insane limitation. So this thing runs on everything, and see both copy of developers on there, like games that people have made based on other games stuff, but you also just see insane games that you're like, this is incredible and it should be a full console game. I put it in text chat, but the game of the year indie platformer from a few years back was made first in Pico 8, and then they basically got a contract to make it and do it in a as a full game, basically on Steam and on Nintendo and stuff. So I would totally use that. I'd mess around with it. I'd play everything on it. The games are free once you download it, and mess around with that. So that's probably mine. I'll put the URL in chat. But yeah, I would check that out. It's cool.
I'm taking the easy way out. GameDeveloper.com. So read up on articles, especially just for game industry stuff, and poke around there. It used to be Gamma Sutra, but they rebranded to GameDeveloper.com.
Yeah, I'll second that. I remember scouring that website when we were first out of school, and looking at game dev jobs and just trying to get more fluent with the industry. It was always reading the postmortems on games, what they learned, what they did wrong, game design reviews, all that stuff. It's very valuable to get a really large scope of information about the industry. Yeah.
I'm gonna be the worst and say Wikipedia because it's had everything and it just keeps getting better, and it's got so much math and it's got so much design, and for me, most importantly, it's got the names of developers and designers on specific games, and then kind of what they've thought about specific games and why they worked or why they didn't. And it's what let me know, like, this is what designers are actually thinking. And it's where they would talk about, like, whatever. I'm trying to make the player feel this way. I'm trying to make the player feel desperate. I'm trying to make the player feel powerful, and that's why the player keeps going. It just leads to too many places. It's too useful. I spend a lot of time on it, and specifically related to work. Eventually, you start working with people who, you know, the more you learn, the more you don't know, right? And everybody around you is an expert in something. You don't have any idea. I can't drag them down and like get their freshman, college textbooks. Like, I got to go to Wikipedia just so I get some of their lingo, and I find that extremely useful.
All right, Josh, you ready, or do you want me to fill mine in?
I'll throw one in there. So I was actually going to go with Wikipedia, but I'll pivot to being even more generic than that.
Good Lord,
I'll just go with Google, since I'm an Alphabet employee anyway.
As it says the Google employee. Let's go with Google.
Exactly. The message I would give with it, though, is it's not always, or it's often not even about learning the nuts and bolts of how to do a particular thing, but you really want to learn about the industry that you're really interested in. Like, so you really want to dive into understanding the problems that you're interested in, the problems that you're trying to solve, and not just like the computer sides of things first. You won't end up being a good engineer if you just learn design patterns and so forth. You need to understand the problems that you're trying to solve and the problems that you're interested in, because the ones that you're interested in are going to be the ones that you pursue passionately and do the best job on.
Yeah.
So Google. Research the heck out of whatever it is that you're interested in.
Yeah, and I'll follow up with that. Like, all of us on our day-to-days, we use Google to research the problems we're working on at that time. We are a Google fool. We got it. So we know how to utilize that search engine to get the answers we need, because we don't know everything, far from it. And so we have to utilize other people's knowledge, and that information lives on Wikipedia and Google. ChatGPT out there as well, an infinite source of knowledge, it seems like. I'll throw one last thing in there, which is kind of an esoteric one. I have a lot of friends, and we all play board games quite often. And Tabletop Simulator has been super popular, and you can actually write your own games on tabletop games in there using Python or JavaScript, PHP, a couple different pieces. Very accessible, have some baked-in assets. It's a much simpler game dev process and cycle. So if you're interested in board games and want to do that, it's a fun place to go experiment and play. Okay, that's it for the panelists. Thank you, guys. Good to see all of your faces again. Some I haven't seen in years. We need to catch up later. Thank you to our audience who came. Thank you for attending. We hope to keep doing these on a monthly basis. New people, new faces, new industries, new ideas, new roles. So if you have ideas for those, please go ahead and send them our way. We obviously have a pretty good LinkedIn Rolodex going on our side of the table, so we can find the industry veterans that you may want to talk about or talk with. We can do that. Internships. Leave those questions here and we'll follow up in the chat there. And then let's see, Marty's trying to tell me something behind the scenes. Let me go over there. Oh yeah, he says the next one that we're running is going to be Monday, November 20th. I'm not sure what the content on that one is, but we'll have that posted soon. As well as some announcements for LeagueOS Scholastic. We will be rolling out our Rocket League tournament. I don't know if that's a spoiler or not, but that will be announced here shortly. And we'll be kicking that off, I think, in November. So keep your eyes on our announcements channel for that. And then we're also going to be launching some pretty fun stuff on the LeagueOS Pro side. Quick teaser there. That will be coming this week as well. So stay tuned in for that. We should have, I think, a list of everyone who attended today. You'll be getting some special badges on your profiles for attending, and we'll go from there. So thank you again to my panelists, my friends, and everyone have a good night. Good day.